Hi again. Stereo.
Yeah.
Millions now living will never die. That's where Ray is at now in examining the early history of the Watchtower. In this section, he's dealt with the 1918 disappointment and the 1920 disappointment, when some very brave predictions about universal anarchy and the total destruction of Babylon the Great failed to come to pass. Well, he's dealing now with a text which made a big difference to us when I read it some 37 or 8 years ago. Jeremiah 23:21, where God says through Isaiah, I did not send the prophets, yet they themselves ran. I did not speak to them, yet they themselves prophesied. About the false prophets of Israel in the days of Ezekiel and Jeremiah.
In 1920, Watchtower President Rutherford published a booklet titled Millions Now Living Will Never Die. That catchy phrase is still used by the organization to this day, and that's still talked about. Back there, however, it was based on a new prediction that the Watchtower president had developed. The whole thrust of the claim that millions then living would never die was tied to a new date, 1925. So now he's got a photostat of the Millions booklet, and this is page 88. A simple calculation of these jubilees brings us to this important fact. 70 jubilees of 50 years each would be a total of 3,500 years. That period of time, beginning 1575 before AD 1, of necessity would end in the fall of the year 1925.
Convenient.
Yeah, boy, amazing. He can do math. At which time the type ends and the great antitype must begin. What then should we expect to take place? In the type there must be a full restoration. Therefore, the great antitype must mark the beginning of the restoration of all things. The chief thing to be restored is the human race to life, and since other scriptures definitely fix the fact that there will be a resurrection of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and other faithful ones of old, and that these will have the first favor, we may expect 1925 to witness the return of these faithful men of Israel from the condition of death, being resurrected and fully restored to perfect humanity, and made the visible legal representatives of the new order of things on earth. Messiah's kingdom, once established, Jesus and his glorified church, constituting the great Messiah, shall minister the blessings to the people that they have so long desired and hoped for and prayed might come. And when that time comes, there will be peace and not war, as the prophet beautifully states. In that day it shall come to pass that the mountains of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it.
So obviously the physical resurrection, that is right before our eyes, will start at least in 1925. That's pretty courageous too. And then we go on page 89 of Millions booklet says, and many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths, for the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. This is puzzling, because then you realize they still believe Jerusalem is part of the picture, Israel is still part of the picture, but it doesn't sound like we're taking this now locally, does it?
Yeah, why aren't they resurrected there?
Yeah, instead of San Diego or Brooklyn. And he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. All familiar words in the literature today. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken it. But the haunting thing about all of this is, of course, he's saying it, they are saying it, to that generation that was around in 1920 when this book came out.
Yeah.
You're still saying this about to the generation that is born 3 generations later. And then the section, Earthly Rulers. As we have heretofore stated, the Great Jubilee cycle is due to begin in 1925. At that time, the earthly phase of the kingdom shall be recognized. The Apostle Paul, in the 11th chapter of Hebrews, that's an assertion, by the way, that I think they still believe this, but you can't prove from Hebrews that Paul wrote it. That's a tradition of Christendom you've adopted. The Apostle Paul names a long list of faithful men who died before the crucifixion of the Lord. This is before they dumped the cross and the crucifixion. And before the beginning of the selection of the church. These can never be a part of the heavenly class. They had no heavenly hopes, but God has in store something good for them. They are to be resurrected as perfect men and constitute the princes or rulers in the earth according to his promise. Therefore we may confidently expect that 1925 will mark the return of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the faithful prophets of old, particularly those named by the apostle in Hebrews chapter 11, to the condition of human perfection.
This is on page 97 of the Millions booklet. Then it shall come to pass that every one who will keep the saying of the Lord shall never see death. This promise would not have been made by Jesus if he did not intend to carry it into full force and effect in due time.
So now Jesus is being implicated in the Millions campaign?
Yeah. Again he said, Whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall die. I could wish they would believe that.
Shall never die?
Whoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. That's right. That's in John 11.
What he said to people in the first century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the that's to Martha and Mary, right?
So they had the gift of everlasting life even then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we believe the Master's statement? If so, when the time comes for the world to know, then they who believe, and of course render themselves in obedience to the terms, have absolute and positive statement of Jesus that they shall never die. So they've just added to what he said. He didn't make and if you are also this or that, doing this or that. Okay, we'll go back to Millions here. Based upon the argument hitherto set forth, then, that the old order of things, the old world, is ending and is therefore passing away, and that the new order is coming in, and that 1925 shall mark the resurrection of the faithful worthies of old, and the beginning of reconstruction. It is reasonable to conclude that millions of people now on the earth will be still on the earth in 1925. Then, based upon the promises set forth in the divine word, we must reach the positive and indisputable conclusion that millions now living will never die. Now, Ray says, this formed the basis for what was called the Millions Campaign, a worldwide effort to call attention to the message of this booklet during the 2-year period. As the book Jehovah's Witnesses in the Divine Purpose states, large billboard advertisements were erected in all the big cities with streaming letters, "Millions now living will never die." This publicity was buttressed by
Buttressed?
Buttressed by newspaper advertisements. All public talks given by Watchtower representatives focused on this theme. The Society relates these features of this all-out, worldwide effort. It even occasionally uses the spectacular slogan today. What it does not inform its readers is that the prime foundation and the whole strength of the claim that millions now living will never die rested on the predictions about 1925, predictions that proved utterly false.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can actually say something now that Ray couldn't say when this came out in the 1980s, namely that we can confidently say, to use their word, we can confidently expect that 1925 will mark the return. But we can confidently say what Ray couldn't say back in the 1980s, that all of these people are dead. We occasionally do get somebody in our comment section who will say, well, not everybody who was alive in 1914 is dead. There's something like 40 people left.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Ray, of course, couldn't in the 1980s because back then the Watchtower could still hang on to the idea that that generation has not died off. No, they can't.
Yeah.
What's our link? It is Joan Setnar who makes the point that her family came into the organization around that time. So whatever fallout was from it, from the older witnesses, somebody came in because of the boldness of this announcement.
Well, even the 40 people left would not be millions.
Yeah. So what do they think they're proving by insisting that someone is still alive?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's desperation.
So Joan Setnar, who with her husband Bill served at Brooklyn Bethel during the 1950s, her family came on board into the Watchtower because of the aggressiveness of Rutherford's campaigns during this era.
Yeah.
Yeah. They always seem to survive, don't they?
Yeah. Just a new spin.
See you next time.
Bye.